character ever. What? Did I lose you?
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. Like,
there we go.
Did I yell at you so hard
about
with Drizzt about Drizzt being a horrible character?
Did you call him Drizzt?
Yes, isn't that how it's pronounced?
I think it's Driz, I think, right?
Driz?
Yeah,
now it's
Driz.
even worse.
It's
That's
like
even
Driz
worse.
do Urin of like the third house of Mesobaranzan.
Ew, you're one of those people.
I liked his writing, man.
Whatever. I read.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
We were having a talk about D&D, and you guys stopped by. Crazy.
Weird. Hey, at least we didn't do the hey. We didn't notice you there. Let me have this.
Well, we can't see people here. We're on the internet. I can see you, and you can talk to me if you want.
Wait, you can see me? They can see me?
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Michael O.J.
I'm Dr. J.R. Whitcomb.
And this is a totally different podcast. So this is a part 2 of a series. So if you're tuning in for the first time live, welcome. This is still part 2. Part 1 is available somewhere on our Facebook page, and soon is going to be on the iTunes podcasting places, wherever you get your podcasts. But what we went over last time is we went over the history, the origins of D&D into when it became kind of a more cult phenomenon. As always, I brought my 17 pages of notes. I think you have 3 pages?
Huh? I don't have any notes this time.
You don't have any notes this time?
No, this is completely off the cuff.
Is my job just to research?
I thought you said I'm color commentary. Anyway, no, this is where we're covering, Michael, we're covering the 1980s. I was there, Michael. I don't need to do research. I experienced it.
Oh, I wasn't there. No. I was not there. That must have been a crazy time.
Oh, man, it was a crazy time.
So Go on. Tell me about crazy times.
It was a wild and crazy time. We had acid wash jeans and Aquanet hairspray. Motley Crue was a thing. It was amazing. We wore roller skates.
I was in the 90s. We had Pogs.
I had Pogs too.
Okay. But we are going to be covering from the start of Gygax's Advanced Dungeons & Dragons into our the Satanic Panic that went on afterwards, and hopefully I think we're going to get to around 3rd edition, which is going to be pretty cool.
He thinks we're going to make it into the 90s today. I don't think so.
Tubular, man.
I don't hold out that much hope, dude. We have the 80s. That's where D&D kind of just went and spread out all over the place. Once we get past the Satanic Panic, man, and the TSR really hit its stride, it was everywhere. So,
well, I mean, the Satanic Panic is going to help contribute to the bolstering of D&D itself.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, we were in the middle of ragging on how terrible and cumbersome the rules were, I believe, last week. Yeah. And I think we cut out right around the time when everybody started getting sued.
Oh, yeah. So last we left, I believe we talked about Gygax has just started up his new book, and that is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Now, he's still a member of TSR. Dave Arneson has since left the company, but there's a big scandal that went on. When David Arneson left the company, he and Gygax are not part on the best terms. So when Gygax released his magnum opus of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, which for the first time, instead of being 3 pamphlets, was 3 massive books. You had the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master Guides, and you had the Monster Manual. The Player's Handbook was how to be a player. The DMG was how to actually balance a party. No more we're getting the chainmail encounters of I roll. Your level 1 party gets wrecked by a dragon. That was fun. Thank you very much for that. That doesn't happen anymore. And now we also get to the point where and the monster manual is the stats for all these monsters, and they had a thing called, for the first time, challenge rating, so you could balance your monsters to the party that they were there.
Yeah, and who does that? Who does that, Michael?
I'll be honest, I've never done it. Not once in my D&D career. I looked at the CR, I'm like, oh, that CR is higher than that CR, so that guy must be slightly stronger, but that's the extent of what I know about CR. I never did like, oh, you can add up the CR and they can equal this to a balanced party. And I'm just like, I like goblins! Throw goblins in! And there's a troll and he's also angry.
I've always been a big proponent of the philosophy, teach your players to run away.
In some games, sure. In other games, not so much. But there's some stuff in the old DMG that I want to get to in a little while.
Okay.
Because the things I think we should bring back into like the 5th edition Monster Manual was only in AD&D from what I recall.
Paying for training?
No, that can stay dead forever. But no, talk about that for a second, I guess.
Oh no, it was just the most ridiculous mechanic that was in later 1st edition and in early 2nd edition. You were actually expected to pay for training. This is actually the main reason why Monty Hall campaigns became a thing in the late 70s and very early 80s. It was because you were expected to pay outrageous amounts of gold. Like it was like from like 1st to 2nd level, it was like almost like 2,000 gold pieces you were expected to pay out to a trainer to attain the skills to make it from 1st to 2nd level in the early editions of D&D. So in order to tune the difficulty to make things not so hard for players, like this is where GM started like, well, you kill some wolf in the woods, and as you slice its stomach open, it empties out the contents of a small treasure chest, including like 5 pearl necklaces and a ruby the size of a fist. Okay, I guess the wolf ate a chest. That's cool, but yeah, it was basically because like you were expected to pay for training, and unless like you were knocking over Scrooge McDuck like every other session, like you were not going to have the money to pay for the training, so you just be 2nd level forever.
Oh sure. What I was talking about bringing back was morale rating. Which I think, so there was a system in AD&D. We'll get back to the lawsuits and the panic, but welcome to a totally different podcast. We find something, we go, hey, look, a thing, it's shiny. Let's run down that trail. We're not going to get to the 90s today. There was a thing in the original, in the AD&D Monster Manual, which was called morale, and monsters would run away. They would have to make a morale check if they lost like more than half their guys, because like a bandit's not going to fight to the death. He might go, I'm running away now. Like undead always had like 0 morale because they were staying, we're fighting because we're undead and we don't care. And like bosses, you could always like flub it because it's like they're not running away, they're boss monsters. But today, like the DMG says otherwise, but most encounters I play with today in 5th edition are like the bandit makes his heroic last stand against you, which is stupid. Which is why I had an issue with the movie Solo, which I thought was dumb. Those bandits Solo gave up their lives. Spoilers for Solo. Trust me, you don't. It's an okay movie. It's a dumb scene where the bandits like give up their life for the job, and you're like, you are thieves. Why are you giving your life for the cause? And what cause? The cause is that guy paid us money. Just run, man.
I heard Lando was good.
Lando was good, and the Millennium Falcon was good, and actually Han Solo was really good, and Chewie was really good. There's just that one scene I had a real big issue with. They're like, I will die for the job because I'm an honorable thief. It's like, no, you're still a thief. Get out of there. You're not paying other thieves. Any whoosies, David Arneson versus Gary Gygax. So Gygax did not actually list David Arneson as an author of AD&D. He lists him as a contributor. Now, the way RPG publishing works, and I have some experience in this myself, is unless you are under contract that you receive a royalty check, which is like most writers work on commission. There's 2 ways writers can get paid. One is a flat fee and one is royalty. Flat fee is like you work for a company. They say, we want you to write this thing. And I've done this personally. They tell you, we want you to write this. We'll pay you X cents a word, but here's your word limit. And you write a module for them. They'll go, thank you very much. They'll pay you whatever money they owe you. And they go, we own that right. However, your name ends up in the book. Like when the Adventures pops in, it'll be like written by Michael O.J. And the Adventures right there, which is cool. Actually, side winding of that, we're doing some work for another company right now. We might actually have them on the show to talk about modern influence of D&D, so that could be pretty fun.
Ooh, fancy.
The second way you get paid is commission, which is a
Mhm.
percentile of whatever of whatever you make. So if I sign a contract, if I get 10% royalties or 20% royalties, I receive 10% or 20% of the completed product. David Arnson was listed as a contributor. He was not paid for any of his work, nor is he listed as an author, nor is he under contract. So Gygax said, everything else sold off AD&D belongs to me. David Arneson said, you can't do that. We came up with D&D together. So Arneson sues Gygax, and the lawsuit results in Gygax losing. David Arneson received 10% of all original D&D sales and 2.5% of all AD&D sales. Of course, did not help their relationship. Although later in their life, I heard they kind of stopped being estranged and started coming back together, especially after when Gygax gets expelled. Which we'll talk about that. That's
okay.
Oh, did you not know that?
No.
No. Okay. Wow. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in a second. That's in the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a person who shows up who really hates him. But as the time goes on, in 1978, we get into our first D&D scandal. And our first D&D scandal is Michigan State University. There's a kid named Boy Genius. He was like 15 years old when he got to college. His name was James Dallas Egbert. And he wasn't
it James Dallas Egbert the third? Yeah,
James,
the third.
It is the third. It is the third.
Mm-hmm.
And he was legitimately a computer whiz kid. He was here on like full scholarship. He was top of his class at 15 in college, but he was a 15-year-old in college, and that brings up a whole lot of strength, especially when you're the whiz kid.
Yeah.
He played D&D as a hobby, and it's said that he went to the steam tunnels, so essentially LARP D&D, like dressing up in costumes, and they played in the steam tunnels. But there's disputes of whether or not they actually did that. I don't know if you've heard one way or the other definitively. Some people say they actually played D&D in the steam tunnels. Others just say he was in the steam tunnels.
Well, no. From what what I have gleaned from the book about the incident written by William Deere, who was the Superman private investigator that was brought in to look over the case, like, yeah, apparently they were playing in the steam tunnels, and there was like, he went down there and there was a whole bunch of like tables and like gaming paraphernalia and stuff. I mean, honestly, it just looks, from what it sounds to me, is just some college kids found a cool place to hang out and play D&D. Yeah, to hang out and play D&D. Like, I had a creepy basement. It was awesome. Like, you know.
Okay, yeah, sure. So they're down there, and he goes missing, and sparks a manhunt where they hire this private investigator who you brought up, William Deere. William Deere says, "I found the link. It's D&D." And to this day, he's like super like, it was D&D. Yes, I'm sure of it.
Well, the thing is like I don't know if it was the chicken or the egg with this, but he was one of those people like, aha, I found this book in James's room. It must have something to do with this, the Dungeon Master's Guide. And he read it, and he was he got under the impression that like with D&D, it was like the old adage of, if your character dies, you have to die in real life.
Oh, well, that we'll talk about the
chick track,
Darkest Dungeon.
Yeah. Like,
Dark Dungeons.
But yeah, he very much got like that vibe off of just picking up and gleaning, like, you know, flipping through the Dungeon Master's Guide. So yeah, he went off on this crazy manhunt. And long story short, I mean, with poor James Deere, like,
he comes back. He comes back a week later. He's found somewhere way out of state.
And apparently he went to Gen Con. There's rumors he went to Gen Con 12.
Makes sense, which was a small convention back then.
Yeah.
But yeah. And he sadly killed himself a year after.
Yeah.
Which is terrible, but people started taking this and running with it. Now, beforehand, it was comic books. There was a book written called Seduction of the Innocent, which was a book kind of saying that comic books are turning your kids away from the good nature of the world. Comic books are turning your kids to Satanism. It's false idols. That was a big thing. That's 60s mostly. And then in the 80s, we have a new target. We have D&D. But it doesn't really start becoming the true Satanic Panic until there was a guy named Bink Pollings who shoots himself. And his mother, Patricia Pollings, sues TSR, and she loses. Now, she founds an organization called BADD, B-A-D-D, Bothered About Dungeons and Dragons. And there's like a, you can find like the old news articles, and it's like a lich going like holding out his hands out into the picture, and it says, if you need help, call the helpline. There was like a big cross next to it. It was bizarre, but it was basically like an angry soccer moms who wanted to bring down D&D, and they were going hard for it. In 1985, there's a 60-minute special, a very famous one, that I sat through the entirety of it for this podcast. And man, the reporter's name was Ed Brady, and he was just a normal 60 Minutes person, but he goes on this whole thing about how we've proven D&D and suicide are linked. And it was, the people here on the show were like hardcore people against D&D. Now later, while this is going on, D&D sales had the opposite effect these people wanted it to. They spike. Everyone wants to play the Satanic game because it ends up in the news everywhere. So instead of it being, oh yes, we don't play the Satan game, people were like, there's a Satan game that's taking kids' souls. Sign me up. Let's go to the creepy tunnels and play D&D, which I can only imagine led to the most disappointment in these kids' eyes. Oh man, what do we do? I roll for 3 points of damage.
Ew, it's math! No!
Fine, we're here anyway, because the Satanic game. Let's go.
Ew, it's math. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was very much one of those kids. Like, I saw Mazes and Monsters as a child, and Mazes and Monsters
is a far-out game.
It's a far-out game. It's a 1982 movie. It's one of Tom Hanks's first movies.
Well, let's first talk about the book that comes out before that. There's a book
called
Mazes and Monsters.
I was going to say, I thought
there's a book that's based on the James Dallas Egbert III incident about the steam tunnels. It's a fictional recount of the story. It was made into a made-for-TV movie starring Tom Hanks, based on not the James Dallas Egbert situation, but based on the book that was inspired by the James Dallas Egbert situation.
Exactly.
So but yeah, please.
But seriously, that was the movie. I'm like, oh my god, these people are dressing up. The guy that's the dungeon master, the maze lord or whatever it was. He actually had
maze. It was the maze controller.
The maze controllers. He had all these like paper mache dummies popping out from corners in like the local caves, and they would all get dressed up as their characters. I'm like, this is so cool. I want to do this. And then it was like a few years later, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 came out where they all play D&D, and the kid in the wheelchair, like, I am the wizard master. You know what I mean? Like it was everywhere.
That was Dream Warriors, yeah.
Dream Warriors,
yeah. Dream Warriors.
The best Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, I don't disagree with you.
Excellent. You shouldn't. And, of course, what else happened? A year after Mazes and Monsters, in 1983, we got on, I believe it debuted on ABC, the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon.
I want to go back to Mazes and Monsters real quick. Because if you've never seen this movie, it is phenomenal. I love this movie. It's literally Tom Hanks in his first starring role, which is nuts.
You could see he was so uncomfortable through this whole thing.
It's not in his resume.
Nope, it's not.
And they play the game, and like you said, at one point they're going in the tunnels, and I remember watching. And I think what we'll do at some point is me and you will just sit there and we'll watch the movie and we'll riff it for people because I think it would be a lot of fun to do. But at one point, I remember this: they're in the steam tunnels, and he rings a bell because the guy who's the maze controller goes ding-a-ling-ding, and he says a monster, and everyone freezes. And he says, it's agoraphil. And I remember opening up the DMG while I had it. I'm like, what is that?
That's not a thing.
You could have used one of these. No, you picked a weird name. It's like this. He goes insane. He starts seeing monsters. At one point, he shanks a guy in New York City. He goes, I stabbed a guy. And you're like, what does that happen?
Well, they made it. They gave him a he had a very troubled backstory. Of he had an older brother that just vanished into New York City when he was younger, and apparently that was his brother played Mazes and Monsters, and his brother was his best friend, and so it's a combination of Tom Hanks's character being troubled already and this innate desire to go and find his missing brother. So he packs up all of his like character stuff and goes wandering around the New York City sewers, like thinking
It's
just
fascinating.
yeah, just absolutely convinced he is Pardue, a holy man.
And it's Tom Hanks.
And it's Tom Hanks. And then his friends have to like decode, like, you know, it's like the room with the map and the red string. They have to decode all of Tom Hanks's crazy person stuff and find out that he's like going to jump off of a building, and they catch him just in time. It's like, no, I am the maze controller. You cannot do this. Like, no, I can. I have spells, but you don't have enough points to cast your spells.
It's bizarre.
Oh my God, Steve, where am I?
There's another movie that comes out afterwards called Skullduggery, which is like Mazes and Monsters, but take all the like fun out of it. It's about this like crazy guy. It's about this guy who has the most monotone voice, and he hangs at a costume shop, and like his DM wants to like get him to join a satanic cult. So he starts just like offing people as the warlock. And everything he says, he adds that emphasis. Like now when he's playing a character, that's just him. And for every reason, like everyone who plays D&D idolizes him because he's like the coolest guy. It's wonderful. But these movies were coming out, and we mentioned earlier Robert Chick, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Robert Chick, who released comics. He had comics demonizing a lot of things. One of them was his favorite was D&D. There was the one Darkest Dungeons where basically you will join the occult. There's one where he was bashing Catholics for like worshiping a cookie.
Oh yeah, that's the one where he was complaining about communion, right?
Yeah, he's saying like it's false idols. But he makes a whole bunch. He was a prolific comic artist who wanted to make hardcore evangelical comic books of why your kid should not be playing D&D. And moms bought this. Like, if they saw your kids playing D&D, granted, it didn't help. The cover has Moloch on it, who's literally like the devil. You're like, I wonder what this game's about. And you're like, well, maybe part of it was Gygax would tell there's a documentary about him where he's like, yeah, apparently Gygax was just like laughing it up, being like, I don't see how they care about that, because they figured out D&D was about like good guys fighting bad guys, and they're like, listen, I don't care anymore, man. But you mentioned the TV cartoon, so go ahead and explain that, and I'll explain how the TV cartoon led to him getting ousted from the company.
Really? Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, the cartoon popped up in 1983. I think there were 3 seasons. They never actually brought it to a conclusion, but it was a bunch of kids are at an amusement park and they go, wow, the Dungeons and Dragons ride. And it's one of those like, you know, like roller coaster in the dark things. They hop on, and when they pop out the other side, they're in Dungeons and Dragons, and oh no, it's Tiamat, and like Tiamat comes lumbering out from behind a rock or something.
Tiamat, for those who don't know, is one of the most iconic monsters in D&D. She's a 5-headed dragon, one of each color, and she's like the queen of dragons.
So yeah, it's like this 5-headed dragon pops out from behind a rock, and then there's this little short guy in red robes with like the Franciscan monk. He's bald on top with long white hair. He looks like someone that should be played by Warwick Davis. And he's like, aha, fear not, wizard, ranger, cavalier. And he just rattles off all the classes, and he gives all of the kids like magic D&D weapons. Like the wizard has a hat that he can pull stuff out of, and the ranger has a magic bow. No, there's no Vorpal anything. The cavalier has a shield. There's a barbarian who's a little kid with a club. The thief has a cloak of invisibility, and stuff like that. Or actually, no, she's not the thief. She's the acrobat. And yeah, they're trapped in the world of D&D, and they're all trying to get home. And on the way, they help people and discover that the real Dungeons and Dragons were the friends they made along the way.
It's literally like the Transformers cartoon of buy this product. We also made a mistake. It was Jack Chick, not Rubber Chick.
Okay.
But okay, no, it's like literally buy this product. You can be cool too, like these kids.
Yeah. But the cool thing is that I found out actually while poking around for this episode is the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon was never actually finished, but a bunch of fans got the script for the final episode and did a recreation of like the artwork and stuff, and actually there is a fan version of what was supposed to be the final episode of the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon on YouTube. I watched like the first couple of minutes of it and it seemed a little hokey. I'm reserving my judgment on it, but that's
definitely the original wasn't hokey.
I mean, in comparison to the original, as someone that could sit there and like in my head, this is the original version and this is the YouTube thing that I'm watching right now. There was some sort of incongruity going on.
Well, of course.
You know, like I literally gave it like less than 5 minutes of my time. So,
okay.
You know, we'll have to.
So just to be clear, I sat through the 60 minutes episode where they were talking how I had Satanic, and you couldn't watch 10 minutes of a D&D cartoon.
Nope.
Okay. All right.
Hey, I didn't ask you to watch the entire 60 minutes of the thing. You chose that.
It was a segment. It was only like I think it's like 18 minutes total. But yeah, so I see where we stand in this relationship. Now, while he goes to produce the show, Gygax moves to LA to produce the show. Now, the show was actually written by Gary Gygax and produced by Gary Gygax. I believe in every episode it's created by Gary Gygax. Now, he hires a woman named Lorraine Williams, who is a publicist. She is most famous for publishing, for being like the contact person for publishing the Dragonlance novels, which are very popular novels in Dragonlance, in the D&D universe. And we'll talk about that in just a little while when we get to the planes and different what are they called? Oh goodness, campaign settings. Settings.
I was like, what, the spheres? Are we talking Spelljammer all of a sudden?
Are we talking Planescape, which I love so very much?
Spelljammer was better.
So now Lorraine Williams was kind of not a person you'd expect to be running a gaming company. She in fact hated games. She was a literary person. Now she saw dollar signs when Gygax did not, because Gygax was not the most money grubby kind of guy. He was more of a guy who was like, hey, I want, if my name's on it, I want it to be mine. I don't want other people having it. Right? He hates the fact that other people have his identity. She was a money person, so she buys majority shares out from under Gygax. She gets 51% of the company, and she fires Gygax from his own company. So Gygax gets ousted from his own company, from Dungeons & Dragons, for good, before 3rd edition comes out. 3rd edition is going to bring him back. We'll talk about how. But TSR focuses on just publishing. She wants to turn into a publishing empire. They also said, hey, we're a game company. Apparently, she banned the people from playing games on company time, which is weird for a game company that's trying to innovate games. So like, they'd be testing D&D, and they'd be like, you have to do that on your own time. And they're like, lady, this is our job. I'm a game designer. Do you want me to not play games? And she says, the money is not in role-playing games. The money is in cards and collectible games where they can keep buying booster packs. Because we know, happening over here, there's a company called Wizards of the Coast, and one of the most famed card creators has just invented a game called Magic the Gathering, which is taking the world by storm. In fact, I believe at this point they just had the second world champion for $10,000, which is a small amount compared to what they offer today for the Magic World Champion. But they just had their world championship. And she said, I can get on that. And she invented a game called Dragon Dice. Or she did not invent it, but she made other people invent it on their own time because they couldn't play games at work. And by that look, I've never played it, but maybe you have.
I'm reaching over to my purple Crown Royal dice bag that any good gamer should have. Somewhere in here, I actually know I still have a couple of Dragon Dice. Let's see if we can hold that up to the counter. Like basically all the majority of them were reskinned regular D&D dice that served some sort of idiotic purpose. It was basically a prototype for what eventually became like Three Dragon Ante, where it was just a simple stupid dice game. I barely even remember the rules of it, but
she wanted it to rival. There was a collectible component to Dragon Dice. Apparently, you have to keep buying expansions to get your pieces, and she thought this was gonna be, beat Richard Garfield's Magic the Gathering. Long story short, it did not. It failed horribly. In fact, it failed so badly that TSR took a massive loss, and D&D was getting stagnant because Gygax was kind of going, I'm out. Good luck. You'll fail on your own. Yep. And yet they did fail on their own. And we're gonna talk about the actual inner workings of D&D and my pages upon pages notes of the tables in AD&D, because yay tables. And psionics, we could talk about psionics today.
Oh, we beat up psionics so bad last week, bro.
We did. I hate psionics.
So do I.
In 1997, they finally sell to Wizards of the Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when we get 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons, and they hire Gygax back on as a consultant.
Mm-hmm. Well, 3rd edition didn't actually drop until 2000. Yeah, they actually spent a little bit of time like inhabiting the carcass of TSR, and I think there's actually a few things that were put out near the end that still had like they were TSR Wizards of the Coast. I think that might have been Dragon Fist. I could be wrong.
Could have been. It totally could have been. But that's kind of like the backdrop of AD&D. Now let's actually talk about the game. AD&D. If you go back from a modern edition of D&D and you go back to AD&D, it will seem inane. But we have to look at it from a future timeline perspective. We talked a little last time about THAC0. THAC 0.
2-hit armor class 0.
Every monster would have a THAC0. And every character would have a THAC0.
Mm-hmm.
Every character would have a THAC0 too. The way this worked is I would roll to hit an armor class of 0. I need to roll what my THAC0 was. If I had a THAC0 of 4, I need a 4 to hit an armor class of 0.
Mm-hmm.
Now, an AC of 0 was like near impossible. I don't think you could actually get an AC of 0 as a player.
No, you could. AC 0 was full plate and shield. And if you had like magical armor, you could get to -1 and so on. I could have swore it
play Melon Shield is 1.
Okay.
The lower your number was, the better armor you had.
Mm-hmm.
And you keep going up from there, and you compare your THAC0 to it. So you have to do this weird math. And Jeff, you know this better than I do. But talk me through this. I have a THAC0 of 7.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And you have an AC of 8. What do I need to roll to hit you?
Okay, so I believe you would need a 15. Your THAC0 is 7, you said?
My THAC0 is 7.
And my AC is 8. So AC of 0, so blah, blah. Yeah, I believe you need a 15 to hit.
15 is also, yep.
Yeah, the quick way is I believe you would add the armor class to the THAC0. Correct, and that is how you would reconcile it mathematically.
Exactly. And if it was a lower number than that, you would just lower numbers that you had to roll. So at a negative AC, which was possible, or some creatures had negative THAC0s, like the Tarask had a THAC0. The Tarask is essentially, for those who don't know, is like the Godzilla monster. Gary Gygax was like, what if I made a monster and he was Godzilla and he could kill everyone?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the Tarask. He's been in every edition of D&D ever since Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. He's the world destroyer, and certainly like if you fight him, you tend to lose. But D&D kind of built this mythos up of these like all-powerful monsters, these very notable characters that everyone kind of gravitated to. We think about like characters like Lord Soth, who's like the Death Knight King. We think about Tiamat, the dragon, who's like very iconic. You think of Vecna, the dark god of necromancy.
You said his name. You're not
you think
supposed
of
to do that.
I can never pronounce his name, but the Lich in the Tomb of Horrors, Astarak.
Oh God, yeah, he did have a ridiculous
It's
name
like
like that.
Atzar. I've always wanted to Asterak, but I could be terribly wrong. But there's iconic characters, and people made books around them as well.
Mm-hmm. See, that's the thing. You're rattling off a lot of like the super duper mainstream stuff. Like you read like you're a Drizzt fan. You read freaking Forgotten Realms. I was the odd boy out. I read most of the Ravenloft stuff, which covers Soth, but it also covers Strahd von Zarovich. It covers Azalin. I mean, it covers oh geez, it covers Godfrey. It covers uh the Illithid Godbrain. It covers
A lot of people.
eventually Vecna. Yeah, it's oh.
And we'll talk about the settings in just a little bit. I kind of just talk about the game itself. Now,
Yeah.
AD&D was more streamlined than the original Chain. It would have been what the original Dungeons and Dragons could have been. So it had more. So Gygax had this philosophy of let's make more things. So there was tables for everything. There was a table of urinary tract infection in the Dungeon Master Guide. If you want to know if your character will contract a urinary tract infection, hey man, there's a table for that. The Age of Elves table, because elves had weird rules for their aging. You want to find out how old your elf can be? Well, use this weird table. Do you want to find out what harlots are in a city? There was a harlot table. It was a D100 table, and you would find out what kind of women would show up if you were going out looking. There were tables for what kind of gambling games people were playing. There were tables for like medicinal medicines for like curing constipation. There's like a list of like, oh, if you're a druid, you just know these things and you can find out information.
You know, and as you're rattling stuff off, I'm like, yeah, that was the Wilderness Guide. Yeah, that was Unearthed Arcana. Like, I probably have those over there somewhere. But yeah, tables upon tables upon tables. And that was the thing that was both really nifty about AD&D is that if you wanted to know, like if you didn't want to just come off the cuff and figure it out for yourself, you could go out there and you could buy a book with a table in it.
You could also buy a lot of books that had some weird information. Like some of the weird classes out there were definitely there, and some things that we as D&D players kind of look at. We kind of go, oh, okay, these are the kind of these are the where these classes got their start. There's actually 4 types of classes with really subclasses in them. There was your warrior, warrior header. There's no class called warrior, but you had a fighter who was about hitting people. You had a paladin who no longer had a charisma save of 17 required because they used to. They had a ranger who no longer was just a paladin with a bow. He had like a bear that he hung out with. There was your priestly headers. You had your clerics who worship gods. You had your druids. And you had what's called your specialty priests, which everyone who was worth their salt played. Because they were just better than everything else. And we'll talk about why in a second. You had your rogues, kind of like your thieves class, and you had your bard class. Thieves were weird. Thieves worked off percentiles for most things. You could pickpocket at like 3rd level, and there's a 70% chance you were going to fail, but hey, you can do it.
You can do it. Oh my God. Yeah. We alighted on it just ever so briefly last week. Like thief skills were just so booty back then. Like, and then there were the armor penalties. Like, yeah, you had all of these, like, 70% chance to climb walls, 15% chance of picking a lock. Conversely, like if you had any sort of armor, like beyond padded, you had penalties to it. And thieves were really, really squishy. And they came up with all of these idiotic like workarounds, like, oh, well, there's silenced chainmail you could buy that will give you a -30 to your pickpocket, but your move in shadow or your move silently won't get penalized.
Well, and you touched on that about there was hundreds upon hundreds of magic items in the base guide. In the base guide. And we also get our first time of what kind of makes D&D spellcasting unique. We get the schools of magic. You had 8. You had conjuration, the ability to like summon things from the earth, or like make things. You had necromancy, about controlling life and death. Evocation, about summoning elements. You had abjuration, about putting up like defenses on you. Transmutation, changing one thing into another. Divination, seeing into the future. Enchantment, putting a magical blessing on a weapon. And illusion, creating things that aren't real but can seem real to people who kind of fail checks.
You also forgot divination's ability to be completely useless.
It's yeah, no, it's on the second page. It says, "Why would you pick this?" Then you open up again. It says, "Seriously, do not pick this."
Like, no, because I remember in the specialization table for second edition, it's like, yes, if you are specialized in conjuration, you have to pick like 3 other schools that you didn't have access to. Divination was the only one where they're like, oh, you want to be a diviner? Oh, you only have to pick 1 or 2 schools. Like you can pick 2 of the crappy schools because they totally acknowledge that some of the schools, not all schools were equal. But yeah, like divination was.
They weren't.
Like,
Yeah, no, they were not. They were like, yeah, this is just better. You could take this one if you really want to, but like, don't.
and they always you could tell they were always like, you should pick necromancy. Necromancy should be your prohibited school because necromancers are bad guys and this is a heroic game.
Well, so in necromancy, yeah, because you had a school that was prohibited, and this is the 3rd edition too, where you were good at casting 2 schools and you were really bad at casting 1. Now, necromancy, interestingly enough, had all the healing spells.
It had from a divine angle. This, I believe, we're talking more arcane classes, or sorry, magic users.
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah, no, the priestly ones, it was determined by your deity, or at least that's how I remember it being determined. So yeah, you could specialize, air quotes, but again, it was always within the purview of your god.
Oh, so those are the specialty priests. I also want to talk about evocation, because this is where we get my favorite D&D meme, which is most people played evocation mages, got to 5th level and said, I have this spell called Fireball. And what it does is it blows up everyone here. So usually there would be a statement of, I didn't ask how big the room was. I said I cast Fireball.
No, or the other one is when your wizard asks for asks for your D6s. How many D6s do you need? All of them.
Now wizards were very not good back in the day. Like they were not good at early levels. Early level wizards, you had a spell, you had a wand, and you would cast a spell, and then you were a guy with D4 hit points and a stick, and you would be like, all right, guys, sleep. If it worked, great. If not, great. But please protect me. Are you gonna be in the front lines? No. Why would I go there?
Michael, no, you forgot the wizard's most trusty companion, darts.
Oh, yeah.
Every wizard had darts.
Go ahead and explain.
They deal 1 damage.
Yeah, you could like point. You were like a guy with your fingers going pew 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 pew. This will happen when eventually. By the way, if you have armor, this does nothing.
That's the thing that cracked me up, because like you picture like this epic fantasy battle. There's big burly people in armor banging weapons, and your roguey types sneaking around and stabbing people in the back, and there's your wizard in their robes in the back just.
I got him!
Yeah!
I got him! I'm kind of helping!
With pub darts. I'm helping.
Now, with the exception of D&D worked off an early system where not all classes were equal and they didn't hide it. There was kind of like a bell curve that happened. So you think of like if you think of like a graph, up in the top, there is the fighter, and up at the bottom there's the wizard. And if you imagine a line, the fighter starts decreasing power as the wizard starts increasing in power. So eventually they swap places at the higher level, because a high level wizard can be like, yeah, I drop a meteor there, that guy dies, I raise his corpse, I'm invincible for a minute, I use wish, that guy goes away now, I'm just gonna sit here and I'm just gonna murder people. Are you a fighter? Cool, I'm gonna cast a spell called Power Word Kill. You die. I'm helping. Now, you respected high level wizard because it's like, man, you went through a lot of shit to get here, didn't you? And the guy's like, I've seen some shit. Once I was attacked by goblins and I ran away. Now I have a spell called Kill Goblins. I invented this spell. But there was the class Specialty Priest, where you could be a cleric, or you could be what's called a Specialty Priest. And for some reason in D&D, these specialty classes were better than every other class. Because if you want to be a good wizard, don't be that. Be a specialty priest of magic. Do you want to be a good fighter? Don't be that. Be a specialty priest of war. Do you want to be able to be a stealthy person? No problem. A specialty priest of shadows, and you would take these specialty priest headers, which everyone had, and they would all be this thing. There was one about the moon, and it was just better than all of them because if it was nighttime, you were just Diesel. And
Vin Diesel.
that's right. He showed up to your game and he sat down with you. That's why everyone played it. His schedule was real booked because of it. But the ideology the classes are not created equal was a thing I actually liked about some of the, even third edition had that. I like the idea of not all classes need to be balanced like a T. I think it kind of takes us some of the flavor. Like, I'm better at this thing and you're better at this thing. But we don't have to be like equal in everything.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, like, it's, and we'll have to cover it when we finally get to the modern day of gaming. Like, I have mixed feelings on it. Like, I appreciate the accessibility. I like how it makes it, again, it makes it balanced for everybody. But at the same time, yeah, it definitely has boiled a little bit of the flavor out of the game.
Yeah, well, but we'll talk about it. I will say this about AD&D: it has flavor. Would I recommend playing AD&D? No. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. I have a friend who's like, I've been playing AD&D for years, and I'm like, still? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, why? There's better stuff out there, man. Now, this was innovative for the time, and I need to stress how great it was, but it also got a couple of the stinkers here. There was classes called the Pest Controller, who was in the Complete Guide to Dwarves, and your power was you were better against rats. And this was a base class. There was a class called the Peasant Hero, which is like a hero, because when you're in D&D, you're a hero. In fact, there's a system in D&D called the leveling system.
Mm-hmm.
You level up, like you're a level 1 character, you're a level 2 character, level 3 hero character, etc. Most people in the world of D&D, they mention it specifically, are level 0. Most people are level 0 commoners. In fact, it's why they mention why giant rats are such a problem. There's a famous story on the internet about D&D of people who sent level 0 commoners against a giant rat, and the giant rat wrecks your day. Like a level 1 giant rat is just like, oh, murder, and you're like, oh Jesus, I got killed by a rat. So adventurers, you were born special. Every character you play in D&D is born special, unless you were called a class called a warlock, where explicitly you were not born special. You just sold your soul, and now you get to be better. But I'm not sure if the warlock comes around in AD&D. I might be wrong about that one.
I don't recall the warlock being around in AD&D, but yeah, there were just so many. Oh my god, so many ridiculous subclasses. It just got to be. But speaking to your point before, yeah, NPCs having like levels and abilities, that was specifically like a third edition thing. In second edition, just about anybody that wasn't a hero was considered a 0 level commoner. You had a D4 of hit points at that, and that was it. Like, the whole, oh, well, we have the adept and we have the expert and we have the nobility class. Like, those were very much a third edition thing. But yeah, it speaks to second edition being as cumbersome as it was, as well loved as it was, and as innovative as it was for the time. In hindsight, this is why there's been so many steps forward in tabletop RPGs in the past 30 or so years, because as wonderful as second edition was, it was cumbersome. But I mean,
yeah, go on.
I was going to say, on the bright side, the cool thing is because of its explosion, this is what gave us like the wealth of all of the different campaign settings. And I believe the wealth of different campaign settings is actually what fostered D&D to progress and grow, because it allowed it to branch out, and through each of the different settings, it slowly kind of branched away from the typical sword and sorcery fantasy that linked back to either Conan the Barbarian, if you favor the Gygaxian pattern of thought, or the Tolkien pattern of thought. That was all of the people that were originally telling Gygax.
All the people that weren't Gygax who said, all of the Gygax, we'll buy this game if you make this a Tolkien game. And he's like, fine, I'll make it a Tolkien game. Here you go.
I want it to be a Conan game, but fine.
No. Tolkien. I want hobbits. Oh, can't use that name. We got sued by Tolkien.
We barely covered the lawsuits, and we're already almost at time.
Yeah, I know. I guess next time we'll talk about the campaign settings, but let's kind of just introduce them real quick. Or let's talk about, thoughts on AD&D and like what it did for the system. Next time, what we're going to be talking about is the campaign settings, which are going to be there are settings that have D&D can be played in a drastic number of different locations, because each writer kind of went, what if we played D&D but we were here? And other writers took it and went, I like this setting, I'll write in this. Nowadays, I think there's like 10 core D&D settings. I think in 5th edition there's only like 5 though.
I don't even know. Like, I haven't really seen a lot of like campaign setting books published like they used to be back in the day. Like,
they are coming out. Like Eberron just dropped.
Okay, because like originally, like I wish I brought them over and prepared them. Second edition, when you got a campaign setting, it wasn't just a book like it was for like third, fourth, and fifth edition. You got like a boxed set. I have a Dark Sun setup over there where like it has a cloth map fold out. You would have like 3 or 4 different books, notating all of the different NPCs, all of the different locations. And yeah, there was so many different things. There was Spelljammer, that was D&D in space. There was Dragonlance, which was all about like dragons and knightly virtue.
There was Council of Worms, you could play as dragons.
Yep. Oh my God, there was Planescape. Ooh, Planescape.
Planescape, you could like travel between all the alignment planes. That's something we didn't talk about. I think it could be a good way to end today, is talking about the alignment system, because that's something we didn't touch on last time.
The alignment system. Mm-hmm.
Well, I am like, yay, the alignment system! Woo, alignments! They're so much fun, and you probably hate them.
No, I understand them, but it's one of those things. I recall an article from an old Dragon I think it was Dragon Magazine, that I read years ago.
Well, let's explain them first, and then talk about our opinions on them. So in D&D, every character was given an alignment. This is a key part of the game. And if you go on the internet today and you type in blank alignment table, you'll see like Batman alignment table, and there was 9 core alignments. The 9 alignments kind of worked on 2 axes. On the top axis here, we have good. We have law versus chaos. On the y-axis here, we had good versus evil. So you combine some words. So you had lawful. I generally follow a code. I'm honorable. I'm trustworthy. Neutral. I'll talk about chaotic first. Chaotic, I have no code. I'm kind of wild. I'm kind of free. Then you had your neutral, which was I'm kind of in the middle of these 2 things. Then you had good versus evil. Good, usually in D&D, was about altruism. It's about I'm willing to sacrifice myself for other people. I do good things at the cost of my own self. You had evil, which is I'm about me. At the end of the day, I'm willing to hurt. I'm willing to harm. I'm willing to do bad things because I feel like it and because it strengthens me. So you could be like, take 2 of those words and you became something. Maybe I was lawful good, like I was a paladin. I was like the quintessential paladin archetype. I am like King Arthur.
Whereas like chaotic good, the
Robin Hood.
Yeah, I was about to say everyone's go-to is Robin Hood. I believe Indiana Jones, I think, is another one of the good chaotic
Han
good examples.
Han Solo, like
Han Solo is chaotic neutral.
I'll argue he's chaotic neutral at the start and becomes chaotic good at the end.
I won't argue that. You're right.
There is there's your neutral goods, who are just kind of good people trying to help out people. Generally, this is like lawful good. By the way, Superman. Superman's like your lawful good. Neutral good, you have like, oh man, I can't come up with a good neutral good character. Got any?
No, honestly, I would have placed King Arthur more towards the neutral good, and like Captain America is like more of a lawful good.
Sure,
because it's more neutral good. It's if the laws are good and are helpful to people, then I support them. But if the laws are not good and not helpful to people, I don't support them.
Yeah, I would say like Malcolm Reynolds from Firefly is a very key example of neutral good, or Batman, neutral good. Lawful neutral is like Judge Dredd in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I am the law. True neutral, it could be literally anyone you want, as long as they are kind of out there doing stuff. Like I would argue, like Snape is true neutral.
Well, the thing is true neutral has a lot of arguability towards a bunch of different ways. One,
I
there's
hate when people say apathy. It makes me so mad.
Oh, no, I wasn't going to say apathy. Oh, no, I was going to say there is the concept of balance in true neutrality as well.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
One cannot be too lawful or too chaotic, as one should neither be too good nor too evil. Yeah, no, I dislike the apathy thing. No, that's chaotic lazy, man. That's chaotic lazy.
I would argue like this from Star Wars, from Attack of the Clones, like the Camino and the Cloners. They're true neutral. They're just kind of like, we're here, we do things. Chaotic neutral, that is like your Han Solo in the beginning when he first meets him. Then you have like your evil alignments. You have like your lawful evil. That's kind of like your, I am like Lex Luthor. He obeys the law. My favorite example for lawful evil ever is Lord Zed from Power Rangers. There's a great scene. There's a great scene where he like the power. He's like, "Oh, Power Rangers! I will give you your friend back if you give me the crystal." And they're like, "Here's the crystal." And he goes, "I give you your friends back." And like the two minions next to him are like, "Wait, let's just have them back." And he just beats them up. And he's like, "No, I made an oath." Like he's evil as shit, but he's at least willing to follow his code. You have your like lawful neutral evil. That's like your like Doctor Doom, who's like there to be evil. And you have your chaotic evil of, I'm an anarchist who goes crazy and everyone thinks I'm joking.
Yep.
And these alignments kind of are these branching paths. And alignment themselves can be argued so much day in and day out. Oh, but I killed that child. I am lawful good. But if I do something bad, does my alignment shift? And DMs will punish you sometimes for alignment shifting. Especially if you're a paladin, you actually lose your class.
That's the way it used to work. And I definitely understand, like, at least with the paladin and a few other classes, but alignment being tied to class is one of those things I never necessarily supported. Like monks, I don't like the idea that monks have to be lawful. I mean, think of the monk that came up with like drunken boxing. Are you going to tell me that was a lawful monk? And I understand, like in D&D terms, monks means a practitioner of martial arts. They don't mean like aesthetic monks.
Well, I mean, people thought they did because there was no artwork for the monks initially. So we were like, there's just these Franciscan dudes walking around punching people. All right. Oh, they're Asian.
Yeah, seriously, it's like I understand it to a certain extent with the alignment thing, or like with clerics and stuff like that. But for certain other classes, I never necessarily understood the alignment straitjacket. I mean,
yeah. Oh, I'm generally with you, but I want people to at least understand what it is. Next week we can get into a heated debate about alignment because I have some wild views about alignment.
I'm sure you do.
Like I've argued like stuff like Alexander Anderson from Hellsing is like lawful good, and I like stand by it. People are like, I don't think so. And it's all about like defining good and evil. And I feel like in D&D, what's interesting is you get into this argument with players a lot of, oh, good and evil, they're subjective terms. Well, in D&D, they're not.
They're not like, supposed to be, but anybody that has played for any number of time has had players argue over what is subjectively good and evil.
Yeah, but at which point you pull out the book and you go, good implies altruism, respect for life, and willingness to sacrifice others. Are you these three things? If not, you're not good. But what if I'm doing a good thing? Well, then you're probably neutral. You can be an evil guy. Like I love campaigns where you play as an evil character and he does good things, like legitimately just good things. Just like, no, I care about myself. Like if push comes to shove, I'm running out the back door. I'm letting you all die. But I run a charity. I run an orphanage, not because I like kids, because I'm trying to bolster my self-image. You can play that. You can play a pirate who's lawful, who like follows the pirate code.
Yeah, players that do it in that particular respect are wonderful. It's the ones that like it's and you know the people I'm talking about, Michael.
I were in an evil campaign. I burned the orphanage down.
It's the edgelords,
I didn't ask how big the orphanage was. I cast fireball twice.
What's that? What? I burned down the orphanage and the old folks' home, and I got an ice cream. Win. Like
Well, which is why there's a stigma against chaotic neutral, which is because people take chaotic neutral and go, I am chaotic neutral, so I burned that place down.
Chaotic neutral means never having to say you're sorry.
but it will.
I know.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about that after we get through the 90s and the camp. Well, we still get past the campaign
We
setting.
haven't finished the 80s.
We have to get past the campaign. I'm trying to get to the totally tubular 90s. But no, so that was kind of like a history of D&D. Explained the alignment. We talked about the alignment system. We talked about some introduction things in the Dungeon Master's Guide. We talked about how I believe morale should come back. How THAC0 worked. We went through a lot today.
Morale didn't exactly go away. I at least remember morale being in 3rd edition.
It was, but it was an optional rule. Which I guess you can bring morale back if you want. It's
all rules are optional rules, Michael. It's D&D. That's rule number 1: is all rules are optional rules.
The DM is always right. But no, but I think that's actually a good stopping point. We got through a lot. Next week we talk about the campaign settings, and there is a bunch of them. So over the course of the week, I guess we're going to be talking about these expansive list of campaign settings and doing some research. And it's going to be a tight episode.
I don't need to do expansive research. I am Ravenloft. I am the Mist.
Oh, okay, pal, but I'm giving you a couple others to research. Any hoosies, thank you all for stopping by our show. As always, I'm Michael OJ.
I'm Dr. J.R. Whitcomb.
But if you didn't like the show, this has been a totally
different podcast.
You guys have a great night. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming out. If you could share our video, by the way, we would really appreciate it. Thank you all for watching.
Later, guys. Good night.